Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to turn NotebookLM into an onboarding application. Assuming that you know how to build a business notebook with your operating procedures and how you do business, you want to have a notebook that has this information in the sources area. It doesn't have to be in the chat area and it doesn't have to be in the studio area, but your sources need to represent how you do business and how you want to interact with your customers. You'll then want Gemini to assist you in writing a prompt to get the extraction document. You need to extract out questions that you'll need to ask your customer before you bring them on board. We can do this in a number of different ways. We can attach the notebook to our conversation. We can then ask Gemini to write a prompt for us to help us to get the synthesis for the questions we need to ask our customer. It's a good idea to give context, and you want to go ahead and tell the AI that you're going to be putting these questions into a Google form. Okay, so we're just going to say that we're going to assume that this customer has already agreed, they've already made payment or the first payment, and what we want to do is we want to get the prompt in order to go into NotebookLM to get the questions for our onboarding document. We always want to use the latest version of Gemini as possible, and that's always going to be the one that's going to be in the chat. If we're going to choose one, we want to choose Gemini over the chat in NotebookLM, which tends to be an earlier version where the chat is typically going to give you the latest version. Now, because we attached the notebook, Gemini went ahead and gave us the questions as it sees it. So we could use this set of questions. We're going to go ahead and just save this and export this to docs. We're going to go ahead and put the prompt into the chat. We're then going to click insert. Now, one of the things you do want to tell NotebookLM is not to use citations. And once we do that, we will then click enter. We will then await for NotebookLM to give us the questions for us to be able to use. NotebookLM has produced our document. We're going to save it. We're then going to export it to docs. You then really have two sets of questions. So what you can do is you can get the files, you can add them both from your drive. That's what we're going to do. We're going to add both set of questions. What we're going to do is we're going to ask Gemini which one is going to be best. So we're not going to prompt formally here. We're just going to ask Gemini in plain language to tell us which one is going to be best, and we're going to use the best one for our purposes. So Gemini has given us the list of 10 questions it thinks is best. Now that we have our 10 intake questions, what we need to do is we need to build a Google form for us to input into a website. But to build this form manually would take us time that we don't necessarily want to spend. And we can use the AI to help us to build the form with these questions now that we have them inside of Gemini. And ask the question about creating the form automatically. Gemini gives us a process. And it states that if we take the script that it gives us and we run it in Gemini Canvas, we will then be able to run the script if we run it inside of Canvas. So that is what we will do. We will paste our questions inside of the script given to us by Gemini, and then we will run the process in Canvas. So we have taken our questions and we have pasted it inside of the script. And so you'll see our questions pasted inside of the script given to us by Gemini. And so now what we need to do is we need to run this script, and we need to run it inside of the Gemini Chat Canvas. So when you paste in the script, you want to make sure that you have Canvas enabled inside of Gemini Chat. Gemini will then run the script and Canvas will open with the script that you're going to run. Now, once again, you don't have to know coding in order to do this, nor do you need to be intimidated by the code. You're just going to copy all of this code on the right side, and we're going to run it just as Gemini tells us. We're going to go to this URL, script.google.com, and we're going to create a new project. And we're going to place that code inside of the project. Once you copy and save the code, you're just going to click this Run button. Again, you should not have to do any coding. You're going to let the app script do all of the heavy lifting in this case. Once you've saved the form, if you've never run a script before, Google may ask you to Google permission to run the script. You will then click Run. And you'll see down at the bottom in the execution log what Google is actually doing. Once the script is run, Google is going to give you two URLs. It's going to give you a publish URL where your form is. It's going to give a URL where you can start editing the form. Now, so that we can see the form, we're going to copy here, and we're going to head to our web browser so we can see the completed form. We can now see our completed form. with all 10 questions. So now we're going to go to the editing screen of that same form. We're going to copy URL. We're going to head to our web browser so that we can edit the form. So we're now inside of our Google form. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go inside of the responses area. We're then going to link this process to Google Sheets so that we can collect the information and to capture it. So we're going to click Link to Sheets, and we're going to create a new spreadsheet for our answers. So when the individual writes in their answers, Google Forms is going to deliver those answers into a Google spreadsheet. We're now going to click Create. And so our spreadsheet is automatically created with the responses from our users. This is not a full-blown tutorial on Google Forms. You can go in and you can customize the settings. For example, you can go into the responses. You can decide on whether you want to collect names and email addresses, whether or not you want to send responders a copy. Again, all of these are things you're going to want to customize for your particular form. What we are concerned with in this case is that we want to go to the ellipsis. We then want to go to embed the HTML code. We want to copy all the HTML code, and we then want to head to our website. If you don't have a website builder, you can use sites.google.com, which is free to use. So we're going to go to sites.google.com. We're going to build a blank site. Now, we're not going to spend a lot of time on customization. We're just going to write in intake form. Obviously, if you're going to be doing this for your business or your brand, you're going to customize this site. We're going to go ahead and give our site a name, and then we're going to make sure that it auto saves. All we need to do at this point is to click the embed code. We're then going to click embed code, and we've already copied. We're just going to paste in the embed code. We're then going to click next. We then want to insert our client intake form. And our form is now inside of our website. We can now make sure it fits, and we're just going to stretch our intake form so that all 10 questions appear. Once I use the drag button so that all 10 questions appear and the submit button, I am then completed with this process. What I can then do is I can preview the page. We're just going to go ahead and publish the page. And we have a web address for the page. We can request that Google not index this in the search engine. We can then publish our page. And our page is then published. We can now view our page. So now when we have a new client, we can take this client through an onboarding process by giving them this form on this specific site. So what we've now done is we've used NotebookLM to build out an onboarding site for our customers. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video.